want to welcome everybody back to the third presentation in this camp meeting. We just want to do a quick review of the work that we did yesterday. So we discussed the Millerite line, and we saw that the emphasis of Ellen White's writings was the Sabbath. Until we go to which book and which chapter? Bob?
Chapter 33 and Spirit of Gifts.
So we go to Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, Chapter 33. And do we know what date that was written?
48.
You said
48.
1848. But we normally go to early writings, which is a compilation. Hopefully we all know that. I think it's 2 books, Experience and Views and Spiritual Gifts. And the chapter title is The Sins of Babylon. And we know that early writings was written much later, almost 40 years later. I shouldn't say written because it's just 2 books put together and republished. Hence the title. Okay, so I want us to remember when this movement, this subject, when this movement looked at this subject, the subject of the Sunday law. So let's not add things to what I didn't say. So we went to early writings. We didn't go to spiritual gifts. Why is that significant? Or problematic, depending on how you view it? Okay, so in our group, no one has a thought. Except Alyssa. Go ahead.
Because of the 1888 history, just preparing them for that time.
So Alyssa said because of the 1888 history, preparing them for that time. So that's true. That book was written to prepare them for the 1888 history that's about to come. But what's the problem, if I can put it that way? This movement has gone to early writings, chapter 33, and has said what? What we said about the chapter. Go to the title, the subject, why have we gone to 33? Carol? Kathy?
I went to it because it was the United States. Slavery.
Okay, so we go to that chapter because it talks about Babylon. The sin that Babylon commits, which is slavery. That's what Kathy's just said. So we're going to, can someone find out when when Early Writings is published? I think it's in the 1880s. Hopefully I'm correct. We're if you can confirm, am I cutting out? Okay. Correct. Okay. We're going to see if we can do something with our internet or not.
Kathy, I'm keeping count.
Okay. So it's we've just confirmed it's 1882. Okay, so we're using the book that's published in 1882 to develop a theory or a model. And that theory says that there's a slavery component to end time prophecy. Why has Ellen White republished that material? Six years before 88. Someone said earlier to prepare them for that, the events that are coming up. And what does the church or Ellen White publish in 88? Got to give her a chance to translate. Linda? The Great Controversy. How many editions of the Great Controversy are there? Do we know? Some people say 2. Okay. So it's at least 2. Is there 3?
They came up with some abridged version that doesn't include everything, and what became called the Great Controversy.
Who did that?
If you're calling, but someone published.
Oh, that's recent. I'm not talking about that one. So we've got 1888 and 1911. So I hate to add information, so I won't. But I think there's another one. I think there's one in 84. Okay, but that's irrelevant. So we've got 82 is going to lead us to 88. David, the 88 Great Controversy, what's the who is the target audience? David says the world. The 1911 is definitely for the world. And so are we all in the... Go ahead. Anybody got a different thought? So Alyssa thinks it's the 1888 version is for the church, not the world. Okay, so we have some disagreement here, and I'm not going to explore that any further. Without asking the group here, I'm going to say that we all agree the early writings is for the church. And what is it preparing the church for? Sorry? But we're in 1882, so you can't be preparing for 1850. Advent. Second Advent. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that it's preparing them for the Sunday law, not the Second Advent. When you read Ellen, I'm going to suggest when we read Ellen White's writings, the Sunday law, close of probation, Second Advent always come as a cluster. They always just come together. So Second Advent is correct, but we know what's about to happen is the 1888 history, which is not the Second Advent. In 82, I'm just going to put them together, Jones and Wagner. Are they nobodies or are they leading lights in the movement? Let's take the word leading. Are they lights in the movement or are they nobodies? I'm not asking about the dad, I'm asking about the son. Anyone else?
I said they were nobodies.
Okay. So most people think that they're nobodies and they just spring out of nowhere in the 1888 history. But we need to remember when they had the general conference and the controversy occurs, you know, only the movers and shakers, only the leaders are invited to those meetings, those private ones. These men are already leaders in some capacity in the church. Ellen White knows who they are and she's aware of their work. I don't know how much visibility she has. I don't know what messages the Lord has given her, but she knows 88 is coming. Wait, could you just do that plastic at the back? So, she's aware of what's going on. So she's going to publish early writings. And I'm suggesting she's going to do that to prepare the church for the soon coming Sunday law crisis. But we've used the book, the chapter, to make a point about a history that occurred 32 years prior. So I want us to see the irony of that. Because if Ellen White had any inkling that there was a slavery component to end time prophecy, or racism, depending on how we want to see it, you'd have expected her to make some comment or make some adjustment to those early writings. So not only do you see it within the book itself, Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, the it being the Sabbath, that's the focus. You see the way she's going to use that material after the 1850 history, 32 years later. She's going to say that chapter 33, along with the rest of the book, Spiritual Gifts, is to prepare you for what? The Sunday law. Not a slavery test, it's a Sabbath test. So I want us to understand as we approach that chapter, on several levels, we are out of sync, out of synchronization with Ellen White's thoughts, with Ellen White's thinking. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that or if it worries or troubles anybody, but I want us to be aware of that. If we'd gone to Spiritual Gifts Volume 1 and developed all of this, that would have been one thing. Because we would be here 2 years before the Sunday law. And we could say she's predicting something. That slavery is going to be the test. So we should have gone to Spiritual Gifts Volume 1 if we wanted to have a more solid argument, but we went to early writings. And the slavery issue is too late to discuss 32 years later. So either Ellen White is discarding chapter 33 or she views it differently. And so this is just another example of how we relate to inspiration, which is fundamentally different to the church. It's fundamentally different to Protestantism. It's much more Catholic than Protestant. Because now we claim that we have power or authority to reinterpret inspiration. Any comments? Melissa?
So in 1888, in the United States history in that time, there were many, after emancipation, after 65, a lot of Black people entered the political arena, and more in 1888.
I don't want a history, just tell me the point you're making, because I can't translate all of that, sorry.
That in the US politics, a lot of white people were getting Black people kicked out of their office.
Okay, so the point you're making?
That maybe she was seeing that and preaching against it.
So Alyssa says that the political landscape approaching 1888 there's still a racial tension that's happening in the United States, even at a political level. And she's suggesting that Ellen White's going to introduce this book with that statement about slavery because of the political climate. Was that for representation of what you said? Any other thoughts? Okay, so we then discussed the issue of personal is political. And I think it's important for us to understand what this means. Whether you say the political is the personal or the personal is political. Recently on the media broadcast, I posted, I can't remember what the format was, but I posted some information about Steve Jobs, Apple, and the iPhone. So I hope at least most of us remember why I did that. It was a series that was done by the BBC called The New Gurus. And I think the story about Steve Jobs was the first of a 9-part series, or maybe 10. So there are many points to be taken from that material, that information. So what I wanted us to see was that the iPhone was developed in connection with the software and the infrastructure of the internet. So you need all of those three components. You need an infrastructure, you need software, and you need hardware. And what's the purpose of all of them, all of those things? The purpose that I wanted us to see. Bob.
Very rapid communication.
Rapid communication, Bob says. Linda? Oh. Linda?
To be a god.
It was to be a god. Anyone else?
Basically, when they said a spiritual journey, it was a spiritual, journey.
So it was about Steve Jobs' spiritual journey. his dissatisfaction because he couldn't find a guru to guide and direct him. So he essentially creates a tool or a system to help people who find themselves in the same situation as he found himself in. We might call it self-help. But what I wanted us to see, that this was a religious phenomena. It's not about the information and Google can teach you anything you want to know. It wasn't that. So this is about religion. And therefore, the component that Linda said about God is involved in this. That you can find God by yourself with these tools. God is the truth. Truth is about information, and you can find anything you want to know without anyone's help. And today things have developed so far. Now you've got, if I can use that term, a priest to guide you. Which we call AI. Currently it's ChatGPT, but that will change soon enough. It will be something else. So why did I want us to see that this was a religious story? So there were a couple of things I wanted us to see. If anybody's got any thoughts, they can share them. Go ahead. No? Okay. So one of them was that religion and culture. There is no difference between religion and culture. They're two sides of the same coin. For this group over here, we'll call them the Nephilims, culture controls them. For the Levites, it's religion. If I can just use it in that term. So I'm saying this is a religious phenomena. And that's fine as it is. But we'll call it the strength. What is the beauty? What is the strength of this system of religion? Before we answer, we're doing a recap of what? What are we recapping? You said we're not recapping the Sabbath. We've done that bit. What are we recapping? I went all the way down the board. Where are we on the board now? We did that. We're going to go back to it, but we did that. We're recapping the personalist political. That's why we're talking about this story. Okay, so this is a religious phenomena. It's not just cultural. It's not just the information highway. It's the narrow path. To, depending on what your taste is, to nirvana. Or what was the term that was used in the recent UK camp meeting by Catherine? Penny said utopia. I want us to see all of these things because it parallels our experience, our theology. Okay, so what's the promotion? What's the strength? We're here, person is political. Of this religious experience. When I take my phone and I'm going to have a religious experience, what's the power? What's the beauty of this? Linda.
Yes, the cohesiveness going on, you along with the Virginia on your mind.
So Linda says there's a cohesiveness or a coming together. Anyone else? So what I took from that is that this tool, those three components, allows me to have a religious experience by myself, which is what? Which is personal, only personal. So now I can have a personal experience with God. And someone standing next to me will have their personal experience with God. Will it be the same or different? It will be different. So we're familiar with the term, I think here, divide and conquer. So when we go back to the history of the rise of radical feminism, and we have all these women who are facing difficulties, they're all having what kind of experience? This one or this one? Making it easy. They're all having a personal experience. They think something has to change. And Penny said they have to come together. So when they come together, they realize they've been deceived. This is not a personal experience. It's a political one. And we're using that word, but we've defined political in its broadest sense already. There's a conspiracy going on, if we can say that, if we can use it that way. So you can only understand the political when something changes. What change must happen to understand the political? You have to come together, Linda said. There is something special and unique that's shown in the 66 books, which is what? You have to come together. God's kingdom on earth is not about an individual experience. If a Spirit Prophecy quote comes to your mind, if we can paraphrase it, God is not gathering something, God is gathering something. I'll do the first one then. God is not gathering individuals. God is saving a people. It's all about group or groupthink. That might sound bad, but if I use the word synchronization, that might be a more pleasant word to hear. So we all think, well, I'll just call it the internet now. The internet is a good thing. And what I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying don't use it. But what I am saying is this idea of individualism is not something that's good. It's something that is in opposition to God's plan of salvation. And all of these individuals or corporations or the state their objective to control us, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, or help us, or make money, depending on how you view it, is to divide and conquer. So you don't understand what is happening. Now, I haven't watched the movie The Matrix, but that is exactly what's going on in that story. There's a system that doesn't want you to understand what is actually going on. And the internet, I should say the iPhone, but this whole experience has weaponized this issue here. And I don't want to be critical of this, but the fact that we as a movement have become comfortable with Zoom which is a kind of a halfway house of individualism, because you can have Sabbath in your pajamas. You can go to church and be eating breakfast at the same time. all things you cannot do, you wouldn't dare do, you wouldn't be allowed to do if we came as a group and worshipped together. So we as a movement have slipped into this arena and if you just take this one principle here, you can see we're falling foul of the truth. So if you can see that tell me when you can hear me. Okay, so we are falling foul of this issue. We're failing. When we come to this idea or this principle of the personal is political, and I'm not saying I have a solution to the problem, but I want to point the problem out. Because this is weaponizing the principle of division and conquer. Okay, any questions or any thoughts? So in our last presentation, I said we need to use, there are others, but we need to use Eden to Eden and the person is political. To help us to answer the question about Sabbath keeping and how we should view it, how we should approach it. The spirit or the letter. So as a group, we're happy that this line as it's written is correct. No one has corrected it as far as I recall. And we began talking about Eden and ending in Eden. And we spent quite a bit of time trying to understand what that symbol or that concept meant. When he talks about Eden to Eden. So we picked up 5 points. We said this was at the beginning, it was before sin, there was equality, this was the kingdom of God, and it was on the new earth. Beginning, before sin, equality, kingdom of God, and the new earth. And the translators have got a copy of this board on your chat. So I added the word new here. Yesterday we didn't have that. And then we went to the end, the Omega. And we tried to understand what that Eden meant there. And we saw it had all the same principles, the same ideas. It's the end of sin, equality, kingdom of God. And we came to the conclusion that this was on the new earth after the millennium. Not on the board here, but we went after the second advent. We went into the 1,000 years. And we saw that sin had not really come to an end. Satan and Satan's angels are still alive and well. And near the end of the 1,000 years, the wicked will be resurrected. And I made the point that if you looked at the two sides, there could be a possibility that Satan would win. So the sin problem hasn't really ended. So that's why we had the new earth, not heaven. So that was our suggestion. People, please comment or message if they have a different opinion. What we saw, the great test that precedes the end is gender and sexism. So we're all familiar with this chiasm. So I don't want to trouble people, but I just want to explore something. Let's go to heaven, the new earth. We've got equality there. So I want to just ask people to describe what they think equality will look like in the new world when sin is all done away with. I want us to explore or try and explain how we view equality. What do we think it even means? When you look to, well, I'm just going to say heaven mostly. When we look to heaven, what do we think equality looks like? What are you imagining that place to be? Linda.
Like heaven before sin, everybody is, well, there was a hierarchy.
Okay, so Linda says there's going to be hierarchy. Carry on.
Probably not.
Oh, not hierarchy?
Well, we're gonna have God and Christ and then be us. I don't think we're gonna be equal to that.
So there's hierarchy. So when we talk about equality, Linda says that sure, there's equality, but so under equality, there's hierarchy. Anything else?
Of that, you've got equality in the sense of men and women.
So Linda says men will be equal to women. So you believe there's going to be men and women?
We're given bodies and there is no qualifications. Maybe there's no gender. I don't know.
Okay, so Linda's not sure if there's going to be men or women. Okay, but she says that human to human, they're all going to be equal.
140,000 in this plan.
Okay, so now she's been forced to shift because now she's saying the 144,000 are different to the rest. And yesterday, people were saying that we will be teaching them. The people who have died in the past. Anything else, anyone? Or Alyssa?
Are we supposed to be equal to God? God's part, so we want Jesus as God's.
So Alyssa says that we're going to be equal to God. We're going to be the counterpart. So there won't be this hierarchy. And I think Penny said the same. Any other thoughts? Bob?
Knowing that Jesus is God, King of the universe, you have to understand he came and represented himself as a servant. And so that ties in with understanding that the counterpart and that we all serve one another and there's equality. I don't see a hierarchy.
So Bob says that our model of being a king is wrong. And that Jesus is a servant king. So when we talk about our experience in heaven, it's going to be the experience of serving one another, not ruling over one another. Okay, will people be richer? Will some people be richer than others? Penny said no. So Linda says we're all going to have different crowns. Sarah? Oh, you said the same thing. Oh, okay. So we're going to have different crowns.
White also said that
Go ahead.
also said that nobody cared.
So Ellen White said everybody was satisfied with their own crown. Except me. Because while I could say that it's fair, I'd be beating myself up that I didn't get more stars. Unless God changes me in the twinkling of an eye and I think differently. Bob?
we cast, all of us cast our crowns at Jesus' feet.
So Bob says we'll cast our crowns at Jesus' feet. But we do take them back. No. So
I never heard it.
So I think that we like a graduation, we throw our hats in the air and we collect them back. And Bob said he hadn't heard that before. So I might be wrong. Okay, I know I'm smiling, but these are serious points. Please remember that.
Somewhere in my mind, if this goes back to the ground, that we're going to have a mantle to sell it on, so. Somebody else, so, I don't know why we're belaboring the point, but you will be happy, I'm telling you. We have a crown, whatever your crown looks like, if you're not happy. You're not going to heaven, because, I mean, the people who are going to be there are going to be happy.
Okay, so Kathy said that, according to her memory, and I think she's correct, we have a shelf in our homes where we place our crowns. And she said, unless I'm happy with my crown, I can't get to heaven. Okay, so I'm not going to fight that. So this is our view of equality. The 144,000, no one mentioned that only they can enter the temple. They seem to be treated special. And I think the group here believes that all those millions of others won't be jealous or envious. Which I find it hard to believe, to be frank. Kathy.
I think that's what you're in mind, and.
The same one I'm going to take to heaven with me.
But you've got, where's the divinity part? You've got to have the divinity and not just the humanity mixed with that.
Okay, so I'm talking about jealousy and envy. And Kathy said, these are human emotions. I've got to have more divinity in me. And that's probably been my problem for a few decades.
You're not.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Not wanting what somebody else has. Happy to pay versus that I can't see.
Okay, so everybody says I'm too nice to be envious. You don't have to. They don't want to translate that. I've never heard that before. They're not going to translate Penny. So, okay, this is the great test. You have to translate her.
David was an earthly king, and yet his idea was that he would be satisfied with being a doorkeeper in God's kingdom.
Okay, so I've got a Bible verse that talks about David being happy with the lowest position in the sanctuary service. But I just want to put these thoughts together. Okay, separate to our emotional response. Separate to our emotional response to the concept of equality. It seems to me that based upon just these few points, and there are a fair few more, that we're not all as equal as we might think. Or as they say about communism, there are some more equal than others. You get the irony of that statement. So I don't want to explore it now more, but I want us to really think about what we envisage equality to look like. Because here, oh, did you say something? No, because here, this is a shadow. This test of sexism or equality is a shadow of what this experience will be. And I'm not really worried too much about that, but that was just the introductory thought to make us think about what this test is about. So let's flip back to the beginning. What did equality look like there? We're on the new earth. Humanity hasn't fallen yet. That would be here. Just before number one. So we're in this history just before that. What does equality look like? Oh,
We know that Lucifer was the highest angel. However, that translates, and when Jesus revealed, or when the God had revealed the equality that Jesus had with the Godhead, Lucifer wasn't happy with that.
okay, so Bob's taken us back into heaven before the creation of humanity. But I think we established yesterday this was the new earth experience. Did anybody have any comments on that?
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead.
He would not have been made to feel less than Adam.
So Linda said Eve was not made to feel lower than Adam. By whom? So Adam wouldn't make Eve feel lesser than him. Any other thoughts? Say that again.
That they shared responsibility.
So Alyssa said that they shared responsibilities. Equally?
Suspicion that it wasn't.
Okay, so Alyssa says they shared responsibility, but not equally. You say more? No? Carol? So Carol said that she was Adam's counterpart. So we've got counterpart. And I think someone said that over here, equal to God, counterpart. And then Alyssa says that they're not equal responsibilities. I think you said something along those lines. Anyone else? Oh, Kathy?
I just think of the first book of the 5 that series and the prophets and patriarchs and prophets. I mean, how it starts out with the garden and they're just working together, building their garden home, you know, with the forward to everything. And it just I think it is, they had true equality and they went around and did the duties that God assigned them to do in taking care of the earth.
So Kathy says that she goes back to read Patriarchs and Prophets. And they're working together in the garden. Sharing the work. Anything else? Any other comments? Go ahead.
So I'll elaborate a little bit more on why I don't think they're equal responsibilities.
Just give us some examples.
So Adam was given the job of naming.
Yeah.
So
So Alyssa says that Adam was given the job of naming the animals and Eve wasn't.
that's where I see.
So that's one example that she's given. Anything else?
She wanders off, so leads me to think that there's division somehow.
Division isn't about equality. Division is rebellion. So she spoke about Eve leaving and there's a division. And I said that division is not to do with equality. It's about rebellion. Go ahead.
Yes, it was, like, why would she leave? He might have said something to her, or like, there could have been a breakdown in that equality to make her do that.
Okay, so now we're presuming things. I don't want to go down there. Bob.
My understanding is when God created all the animals on this earth and Adam named them, it was only after Adam named them and recognized that he didn't have a counterpart, like he saw the male and female of everything else, that then God made Eve. So Eve wasn't even present when Adam did that. I don't know how there would be a.
So one example that was given about inequality was regarding the naming of the animals. But it's been pointed out that the naming of the animals was done before Eve was created. Okay, so they're in the garden and there's a big boulder or a big rock to move. Who would be the one to move it? Angels. Someone said angels. So someone said angels, but I think they made that one up. Oh, so Alyssa gave the wrong answer, saying they work together. And Kathy said there were no boulders. So I could have come up with a different example. The point I wanted to make was, who was stronger? So the congregation here doesn't know who was stronger. I would direct them to the book that Kathy mentioned, Patriarchs and Prophets, and it tells you. So there's a pair on a high up branch. And unless she's going to get on his shoulders, who's the one that's going to be able to reach that? Adam. You just go to the same book and it tells you. So physically, they're not equal. And that's built into the engineering of human beings. And besides some variation, it's pretty much retained over the last 6,000 years. Any thoughts on that? Alyssa?
Sounds to me that we're getting into First Corinthians 13. That everybody has different parts.
They've all got the same parts.
The different skills, the different.
Oh,
talents.
so now this is saying people have got different skills. Different talents.
But it doesn't make us less equal.
Alyssa said it doesn't make us less equal. So you don't see something built into the system that women are physically weaker, shorter than men. You don't see that as inequality. Tell me the word that you used to describe that, or the concept. If not, you don't use equality. What concept is that?
Difference. You can be equal but different.
One second, Ron.
You can be
One second. I'm just asking Alyssa.
Differentiation, different. There's variation.
No, that's not variation. God engineered that. That's not variation. That's not 6 generations down and there's some variation. So she said, Alyssa said this is variation, and I'm suggesting that it's not. Because if God created 2 beings the same height, the same weight, the same size, five generations down, there'd be differences. Because of environmental impact. But it starts off different. Oh, Ron.
Well, 2 people can be equal but different. I mean, treating somebody equally doesn't mean that they can do everything that you can, or that you can do everything they can.
So Ron said that because they were created different sizes, it doesn't mean they're not equal. So Ron, why were they created different sizes?
I don't have a reason for that, but they
So Ron says he doesn't know. And I think none of us know. But I think it's important for us to try to understand the mind of God. Because if you were creating something, I'm guessing with your current understanding of what we'll just call that equality is, as Linda said yesterday, you'd create a socialistic structure, which is code word for they would be the same. That you would envisage in your mind, if you make someone bigger and stronger than the other person, and you give them free mind and free will, what's going to happen? Bob says we've seen it before. So you already know what's going to happen. The bigger person will overpower and control the smaller one. So that's the danger. But the question is, why is God doing this from the very beginning? There must be a reason. Sarah, you had a point earlier on, sorry.
Yeah, so one thing is concerning as well, because Eve was created from
So Sarah's speaking about, as an introductory thought, that Eve is created from Adam's rib.
Yeah, so that shows that really the equality we imagine isn't the way God looked at it.
Okay, so without defining it, Sarah has said, the way we look at equality isn't the same way that God looks at equality. I don't know if this is her point, but I just want to add this additional thought on. We've already said that God's going to make them different sizes. So physically, they're not equal. And then the way God creates them is different. And we can put a positive spin on that. As Paul tries to do. But again, if you were in the design business and you were trying to create a perfect world, would you take the second person and create them from body part of the first? I don't think you would do that. We don't even understand equality, but we understand that much. Because it's inherently wrong and it's going to lead to problems. So on 2 counts so far, we've seen that there is some inequality. Now, I'm not arguing that you can make it all look good and say there are differences. But I want us to understand how we view the equality message, what it means to you. When you go from the beginning to the test to the end. Back in the day, we're on this bottom line, not the top one. I call this 144, and that would be Miller. Somewhere in this history from 2001 to the Sunday Law, we had a very simplistic idea of what the Sunday Law test was going to be. We have no political or societal concept or model to see what is coming. And all you have are a few words of inspiration to build your whole life around. And I don't think there's any way of getting around that. That's part of the experience we need to go through. So I said we're in this history in the early reign. And without trying to mess this line up, what would number one be using that terminology? No, using this terminology here, what would this waymark be? Bob says Sunday Law. Anyone else? That means we agree or disagree. Okay. Alyssa says no.
Looking at the other three is Sunday Law probation. So maybe that's.
Okay, so I'm going to put Sunday Law here. This is the great test. So we're here. And back in the day, we were here. Now, I don't want to create waymarks in here. But there's a consciousness in the movement that we're in the agitation of the Sunday Law. Could someone find the Spirit of Prophecy quote for that? I'm pretty sure it's in the Great Controversy. So we're just looking up the agitation of the Sunday Law. That's not the phrase that you need to look up. It's not quite said in that way. Because when we used to talk about it on this line at the top, we weren't in the agitation. How do I know we weren't in the agitation? How did I know, or how am I saying that when we spoke about the forthcoming Sunday law here, the time of the end magazine, however you want to conceptualize it, because that was pre-agitation. Reference? Oh, we can't find it yet.
The question enforced in the Sunday laws of the Bible educated that so long gallery.
Yes, agitation, that's it. It's great controversy.
Yeah, 605.
Yeah. So agitation is great controversy. 605 paragraph 605 paragraph 3. Now I know how it's written. It kind of infers that we're doing the agitating. And I'm not discussing who's doing the agitating in real life. I'm going to paraphrase, but in the statement it says something like the soon coming. With the inference that thinks that something can be seen. So someone is going to the politics and they're saying, we can see what has been predicted. So there may be different people who are doing the seeing and doing the predicting, but that's not what the point I want to make. Before the Sunday law, in society, you have to see evidence of what you were already preaching about. And when we spoke on this line, the 144,000 line here, how much evidence did we have of the soon coming Sunday law? Zero, none. It was all based upon what we read in inspiration. So now we're on this line. We've predicted based upon Alpha and Omega, or Eden to Eden. The great test is gender, sexism, and equality. And we've moved along the line sufficiently that we're now confident that we can see this test in society being developed. And I'm arguing that we're in the agitation. And in this class, we're not discussing what that waymark was or is. that if it's past or we're just in it. So the reason why this is important is I want to now use personalist political. I want to use personalist political differently. I just want us to take the concept of a personal experience and the societal experience. So don't get confused about that. Politics is politicians. And what's the job of a politician? No, the job is not to get re-elected. Represent the people, to govern the people, to guide and govern the people, to make laws. Right here, law. Okay, so we're expecting a law here. Don't get tripped up by that, because I think there's more to learn about that issue. So as we look to the political arena, we're expecting a law. Or laws, or the way the government governs. It's ethos, which is normally connected to laws. And then there's your personal experience. So it may be that the societal test may well be different to your personal experience. So I just want to point that out. But because we're in the agitation, we're all having a personal experience, whether you're a man or a woman, single or married, parent or child. We can see what's happening in the world. So we should already have a pretty good idea of what this law is going to be about. We'll put Sunday laws. I think we should already have a good idea of what they're about. If that's the case, when it comes to your personal lives, these laws may not impact you directly. And that's something that, if true, is not a phenomena that we used to understand in this model of a Sunday law. Because in that Sunday law model, that test touches everybody, man, woman, and child. in a really personal and literal sense. And in the agitation that we're experiencing now, we don't have time to discuss what the agitation, like a definition, a working definition of what that means. So I might be wrong, but I'm proposing that the agitation looks the same as Sunday law. So if we were to go round the room in our small group, and I were to ask the political landscape, the issues that are confronting society, are they directly affecting you? I think the vast majority of you you'd say no. And this is a territory that we're unfamiliar with. Because we're so used to this model, the 144,000 old model. Either there's going to be something significantly different that will touch each of us personally, individually, which we have no visibility of at the moment, which means we're not in the agitation, which impacts our concept of raffia, Panium, Ukraine. All of that comes into question then. But if it's all correct, when we start looking we haven't listed what the agitation is. I understand we haven't done that. But if we did, and we had 3 points, say, I'm sure there would be at least a good sized minority, if not the majority in this room, that would say that doesn't directly affect me. And I think that's something that we need to understand and get to grips with. Bob.
At some point, even if an individual isn't affected directly by it, ultimately everyone's affected because everyone has to make a choice.
So Bob says, even if we're not directly affected, we all have to make a choice. And I think we should all agree with that. So that is true. But my point is that it's a different reality than the reality only a few years ago we believed that we were going to experience. And I think it's important for us to see that. Reproductive rights affects all of us. But it doesn't affect us all personally. Not in the same way as a universal Sunday law. So there's a personal element that we all have to get our lives in order with. The movement has to get its house in order with respect to sexism and equality. And I think those concepts are important when we start asking what equality looked like at the very beginning. Because our personal experience of equality may not be the same experience that we have when it comes to the Sunday law equality issue. Okay, we've run out of time to get any further. In closing, I just want to make the following observation. It's a comment that Bob made earlier. So it's in the history before Eden in heaven. So in heaven, if you were an observer, I think if you looked at those two, we'll call them people, we'll call him Jesus and Lucifer. If you looked at them, how they're treated, how they behave, the work they do and the responsibilities they have, I think you could be forgiven for believing that they are equal. There's no evidence that Jesus is the superior of Lucifer. It's hidden. So when we consider how the great controversy begins, I agree with Bob, but I have a slightly different perspective of it. It does begin with the subject of equality. And the one that is being harmed or hurt the one that has experienced injustice. Bob doesn't like the word me to use injustice because he knows I'm attacking God, I'm guessing. We only need to open a few books and I could show you story after story of God's injustice. From a human perspective. But it begins with inequality here. And the person who is being hurt is Lucifer. Because he says, Jesus and I are equals. Everybody knows that. And I'm not being treated equally. I'm not being treated fairly by God. And the reason why some of us have problems with looking at that story from that perspective is because we think we have a clearer view of things. But yesterday, we spoke about empathy. And I wonder why we don't have empathy for Lucifer. And the experience that Lucifer had to go through. And the pain that Lucifer had to experience. Because we just passed it off as a test, the great test. Because if it's the great test, it must have been Lucifer's great test. But it's all flipped on its head now. Because the great test isn't about equality. It's about recognizing his inequality. So I just wanted to make that point. We talk about equality in parabolic terms. And what is stressing this movement, what is causing stress to it, is transitioning from a theory or an idea, a parable, to reality. Because every time I bring up reality, the size, the rib, people want to stay in the parable and excuse it. And that's fine in the parabolic world, where we all claim to be radical feminists here at the agitation. But the movement doesn't even know what the kingdom of radical feminism looks like. We're not settled on how that operates. And if we're saying this is the kingdom of radical feminism, which is the same setup that you would have had before the creation of the earth, one thing you know, that the subject of equality is not settled. It's not settled at the beginning. It's not settled at the beginning. And therefore, it shouldn't be a surprise that we have no idea what radical feminism even looks like politically. Let's close with prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you that you continue to teach us as we discuss the line of Eden to Eden. We discuss what the personal and political means to each of us. As we meditate upon the importance of coming together as a body. Not only the importance, but the necessity Help us to have a clearer understanding of what it means on this planet, in this world of sin, to be radical feminists, to understand what equality is in our personal lives, and to begin to understand what the political test or tests will be. And how important it is that we need to have sympathy and particularly have empathy for those around us. Because we may not enter into the same experience as them, literally, but you are teaching us that it's necessary to enter into that experience emotionally. We thank you for this camp meeting, for the time we've had together. In Jesus' name, amen.
This finishes the Arkansas camp meeting, and we want to thank you all for joining us, and we have lots to meditate upon, think upon, and study on as we continue to grow. We want to thank Elder Parminder for his time here with us, and may he be blessed on his next journey. We'd love for everybody to, sorry, I don't have you turned on. Very sorry. We would like to invite you to open up your cameras and say hello to everybody. And I apologize to the translators.
You can unmute yourself if you want to say something.
Hi everybody.
Hi
I'm just
everyone.
listening. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I was just
Oh,
listening to.
nice to meet. God bless.
Have you been listening? Have you been listening? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh,
blessed.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have to revisit the videos via YouTube and
Yeah. Sure.
the fellowships.
We need to watch again.
Try to understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you? Okay.
I'm fine. How are you? This is a dude. Oh, Kedo.
No,
How are you?
this is. Buza.
Whom am I speaking to? Hello? Whom am
Yes,
I speaking to?
you are speaking to Akecha Jack from South Sudan.
Oh, you're from South Sudan.
Yeah.
How is South Sudan? I'm from South Africa.
Oh, that is nice. South Sudan is good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is your name?
My name is Bright, and this is Lillian.
Oh, that is good. Nice for meeting you.
Yes, we're from South Africa.
Oh, that is great. How is South Africa?
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we okay. We okay. Although we expect elections next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you still there? Yes.
Yeah, I'm still there.
I'm saying yes. I'm saying we're expecting national elections next year.
Sure. That will be great. Yeah, you know that next year there is going to be a lot of events which we are waiting for.
How many of you there in South Sudan in your province?
Okay, in my province we are 20 something.
There's a lot of members there.
Yeah.
I mean people in the movement, right?
Yeah, the whole number maybe we can reach around let me say around 80, 70 from there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Hey,
you know that at first time when Elder Parminder and Elder Tess, when they came, we were around 150 something. But afterward, when checking came, many of our people they left.
Oh, because of equality.
Yeah, you know that equality is not easy, so it hit a lot of many people. So
Of
it
course.
was hard saying, and still only that unless we humble our heart and we learn more, this is where we can descend. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody from Arkansas.
Come and see us, Adela.
Where is Chimene? I want to hear from her. Hilda
Hi, everybody
Maris
from
from French.
Yes, I'm listening.
Where is Hilda Maris from French?
I think he's speaking to someone else. Okay.
Hilda Maris from French. Oh, he's not around?
Elder Maurice from France. Maurice, où est-ce que tu es, Maurice?
From French. I want to see him. It has been a long time. Since 2020.
Thank you all for your participation.
Come on, you mic. We always we love that.
Gabriela.
Hello,
Gabriela, how are you? How is school?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Great.
Yeah, how is the better one? I hope you are enjoying Brazilian school. You are there, right?
Yes, I'm in Brazil. We enjoying the school. So everyone must follow classes. It's been a blessing.
Sure. I've been watching videos, so just I usually hear your voice making translation, making some comment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Good.
Oh, that is great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. I hope the school is going on well.
Yes, it's going very well. We've had some thunderstorms here. So sometimes we don't have internet, we don't have connection, but we're still enjoying the school.
All right.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
That is great. Yeah. Have a nice time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay.
Yes.
Obua Manoa.
Manuel, how are you?
I'm okay.
That is good. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you too.
Those of Deacon with Sandra, they are there. Hi.
Me, I can't see them. you greet them for me. I can't see them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Nice. Mm. How are you, Manuel?
I'm
You're
okay.
good?
Yeah.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah, we are trying to push on still.
Yeah, let us try as we can devote our time to make more studies, reviewing all those past presentation.
We need to follow.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Nice day.
Okay, everybody. We're
Uh,
going to close the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you, bye.
you so much. Bye.